Good morning and welcome to the June 1st virtual reading. And we have three wonderful features today in the order of reading. Chase Twichell, Bunkong Tuon, and Pichchenda Bao. And I'm really looking forward to this reading. I know it will be terrific. So let me introduce our first reader, and we'll get started. And for those of you who are interested in signing up for the open mic, it's full at the moment, so I'm sorry to say. Better luck next time. Our first reader is Chase Twichell. Chase has published 8 books of poetry, the most recent of which is Things as It Is from Copper Canyon in 2018. Her work has received numerous awards, including the Guggenheim and National Endowment Fellowships and the Kingsley Tufts Award for Horses, Where the Answers Should Have Been, New and Selected Poems. She taught at Goddard, Hampshire University, the University of Alabama, Princeton, and the Warren Wilson Program for Writers. In 1998, she founded Audible Press, an independent publisher of poetry, which was acquired by Copper Canyon in 2008. She lives in upstate New York.
Thank you. Should I just go ahead? Okay. Glad to see all these faces. I'm going to start with a silly poem. Game camera. The tracks of many animals come and go around the pond. Raccoon, porcupine, dog, leaving their initials in the dirt. I stuck the camera on a stump and watched their nocturnal comings and goings, which were 100% concerned with eating. I saw no mating, but still I worried about violating their privacy. Would I be violating the dog's privacy if I set up a trail cam in the house? I did it as soon as I thought of it. Now a not funny one. First love. Not a heron in wetland, unmoving. Not that pure. Closer to a jay, sidestepping his way along a branch, checking out the feeder below. Still closer to the ravenous starlings that drive away all the other birds. I'm reading from a new book manuscript. It's not finished, but it's in 3 sections. And I'm reading from the first section, these first few poems, which are all kind of set during the pandemic. As a teenager, I became aware of a need to talk to myself. I talked on paper, on and on. I do it to this day, paper and screen. Strange then, strange now, to choose the white loneliness over the gathering next door, the air scented with lilacs and barbecue, with laughing. Strange then, strange now, that language wants to be alone with me. Speed and shortcuts. I am a poem of the pandemic, roaming the unlit streets at night in a pack of scavenging dogs, some with collars and tags. I used to come into being as if from underwater, barely there at first, often slow to blossom, but now there's no more time for slow ripening. Now I want speed and shortcuts, no sidetracks, no dead ends, because soon there will be no time left to say anything. The dogs and I are learning to hunt as a pack. We rule the world we created to replace this one. Now I'm going to skip to the last section, which is basically about getting old. Small sting. Almost every evening, I feel a single small sting of anxiety that I note. Then it goes away. It postpones knowledge of itself. Even stranger, it notes that it's postponing knowledge of itself. I mean me. It's an anxiety that laughs at me. Snow squall. The weather woman says we should prepare for an unusual and extreme event. And here it is, the big pines instantly obliterated, the snow arriving like a missile from space, conflicted in all directions at once. We've taught the weather how to arm itself, then invited it to attack us. I bet the world will end this way, our sins not erased, just buried. Death's hors d'oeuvres. A school of dead gray fish drifts across my vision. Floaters. No names come when I call. Is this what old age will be like? No, this is old age now. I like to take little sips of the horror, morsels of poisoned meat, each taste a foretaste. I'm preparing for future pain, not this pain. That's the lie I tell myself. I have one more. Am I good on time? Flower of false starts. It's a strange flower, the flower of false starts. I dress in its withered petals. Each knob on the stem is the scar of a flower that never fully formed. That never fully bloomed. Or it bloomed, but the flower was not the flower I dreamed. It's almost all stem now. Withered petals, pretty dress. The flower is nearing the end of its life. Each poem leaves a scar. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. It's good to have brief poems. I tend to go on. I know many of us do. Our next poet is Bunkong Tuon, and he is a Cambodian-American writer and poet. He's the author of 3 full-length poetry collections. His work has appeared in World Literature Today, Copper Nickel, New York Quarterly, Massachusetts Review, Diode Poetry, Verse Daily, among others. His greatest hits chapbook, What Is Left, was published by Jakar Press in March 2024. His debut novel, Con Khmer, will be published by Northwestern Curbstone Press in August 2014. He has a website that I will put into the chat. for you to check out and order his books. So go on. Bunkong, go ahead, BK.
Thank you very much, Robbie. And it's quite an honor to be reading with Chase and Pichchenda. And also thank you everybody for being here. I'll start with the title poem from the chapbook, What Is Left. And, I think my work, both creative and academic, as well as my life itself, is a kind of an attempt to look at carefully what is left after war and genocide, after the ashes of war settle. Everything, I think, for me has to do with rebuilding a life after that. And the title poem is about sort of, what do we do after the war? What do we do with our survival? So I'll read from that one. What is left? What is left after war is the gratitude for what is left. My dreams are filled with ghosts looking for home. The dead speak to the living through my poetry. Each time I write, I rebuild, retrieve what was stolen. Nothing is dead until I let it. English is not the language of my birth. It is the language of death. More bombs drop on Cambodia's countryside than in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I was bombarded by this language. I had no choice but to use it. I stand on the precipice, listening. Ghosts are ancestors asking for light. I holler to celebrate the dead and the living. Luk ye, luk ta, bok ma, bu, min, om. Your tongues are my tongue, and we are telling. What is left after war is the gratitude for what is left. So I'll read three more poems, and it's all from this collection here. And this one is for my uncles and aunts. So much they had experienced before they left Cambodia to the refugee camps in Thailand. Much losses, many things that they carried, and all that before they reached 30. I remember when I was around 30, I was a graduate student, and my suffering was working on my dissertation and going to Dunkin' Donut with my girlfriend, who's now my wife then. I can't imagine what they went through, before the age of 30. So this is really for them, and it's called The Carrying. I am what is left after the war that orphaned a generation. And what is left is knowing that what remains is worth carrying. The way the earth carried our tired bodies, how the moon kept still while we crossed jungles, leaves whispered prayers, and sunlight kept us warm. The way Luk Ye carried me on her back, the back that carried the land and fog, the hungry mouth of children and grandchildren, the withered body of her husband, the grime of a widow who raised 7 children all on her own. The way rivers carried our sorrows, and how my aunts carried the deaths of their youth cradled to their chests like broken dolls. How we all carried memories of my mother, how my father carried himself after we had left. At night in the refugee camp, my uncles cradled hope that was as real as the At night in the refugee camp, my uncles cradled hope that was as real as the belief that no matter what came before, life was still alive. Then they turned to their corners of dirt and wept. Sorry about that. And this one, yeah, I'm sure Chenda could sort of help me out with this one too. Um, I was about 5 or 6 uh, when Cambodia fell, um, you know, um, under the Khmer Rouge regime, and but I had no memories of atrocity. I don't have any sort of I don't remember what happened. Um, and I talked to my wife about this, and she said maybe you have selective memory, the kind of memory that shelter and protect you and sustain you. So the poem, is sort of it got me to think about that kind of memory. And so I'll read the poem called The Mercy of Memory. My cousin tells me about what he witnessed, the way they dragged his neighbor by the legs, how the poor man begged for mercy. When they didn't stop, the neighbor looked up to the sky and sobbed quietly at the indifference of the universe. After the neighbor was disappeared, there was nothing left but the hot sun. The sky was blue, and the birds sang their beautiful songs over rice fields. The silence of that moment has haunted my cousin through the years. As for me, I have no recollections, no evidence of atrocities I could document or share in commiseration. I must have been 4 or 5 when the Khmer Rouge took over Cambodia. I must have seen and heard things. I must have felt fear when carried in the night on my grandmother's back. This is the mercy of memory, how it opens and closes certain doors to sustain itself. Just enough light for the self to continue, like the memory of love the grandmother had for her grandson. This is the last poem. I I didn't know my father, um, and all I knew of him were stories told by my grandmother, my uncles and aunts, um, but they were sort of their side of the story. Um, in 2014, 2015, I went to Vietnam, and I met my um, father's side of the family. They lived in the Mekong Delta, which was originally Cambodia before the borders changed. The border changed, and they told me this story, what he went through, and also the story in terms of what Um, anyway, I talked too much. Let me just read the poem. It's called Debt. My father walked up to the Khmer Rouge after they killed the children and opened their stomachs to eat the livers. My father got down on his knees, clapped hands overhead, and begged them for a sliver of a victim's liver so that I would not starve. While everyone was sleeping, my father snuck into the kitchen, stole a branch of coconuts, and buried them in the woods. Each time I cried from hunger, he disappeared into the night, dug up a coconut, gave me the juice to drink, and with dirt-encrusted fingers, spooned out the flesh for me, his only child. That's it. I you know I always save that poem last just in case I couldn't read anymore. Uh, I think it's better reading this time. And I see my life as a gift. And I feel like I need to take care of it and do well and do good by people and by myself and by those who didn't make it. I think that's it. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to Chanda's reading.
Thank you. That was amazing as always. Thank you so much. I've put information about our 3 features work so you can get it for yourself. And it's in the chat. Pichchenda Bao is a Cambodian American poet and writer, infant survivor of the Khmer Rouge genocide, daughter of refugees, and stay-at-home mother. Her work has been published by The Offing, Sunday Salon, New Ohio Review, Cultural Daily, Great Weather for Media, and elsewhere. She is co-editor with Nicole Callahan and Jennifer Franklin of the anthology Braving the Body. And we heard from Jennifer at one of our other readings. She has received support and fellowships from Queen's Council of the Arts, Aspen Words, Bethany Arts Community, and Kundaman. She lives, writes, and raises her 3 children in New York City. And I'll put her website. I think I already put her website in, but just in case, I'll put it in again. And go ahead.
Thank you.
Jenna.
Jimrip Sur Bong. Jimrip Sur, everybody. That's hello in Khmer. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be reading with Bunkong. We've been wanting to do this for a while, and so thank you so much, Robbie, for making this happen, because it's been in my heart for a very long time, and so I'm so happy to be here. I've been thinking a lot about what poetry can do, and I'm so happy that I get to be reading with all of you, because it really, to me, really just shows just how poetry can hold everything, like the silly and the profane and the sacred. And we're all so different. We all have different voices, and I'm just so privileged to be able to share a little bit of my voice with you all. I'm going to start with this poem that I was asked to respond to a poem by a Ukrainian poet as a part of an event honoring the Ukrainian poets and Ukrainian writers who had been lost in the war there. And this was after a poem by Iya Kiva, and it has an epigraph by Ocean Vuong. And the epigraph is, "What if it wasn't the crash that made us, but the debris?" The proper work after Iya Kiva. The daughter of war, born in war, out of war, prays to no one. She knows in times of war, time loses all meaning, and God retreats, leaving the work of carrying on to whatever remains. Implacable days dawn indiscriminately, the nights endlessly giving way to more days, caked like grit on unwashed skin. The daughter of war, wary and weary, picks up the pieces of war, which fall like rain. War collects in the ditches by the blasted roads, seeps into the groundwater under the rubble. War breaches the barriers, engulfs entire countries. There is nothing left of use, nothing else to do except the most infernal task: public grief to a splintering audience whose attention might be the real-time measure of who matters. The daughter of war, tongue-tied with war, toughened by war, tired of war, is trying to cough. Something sharp refuses to go down. Maybe bomb dust or unchecked hunger. Maybe this death toll exacting its price. Even the smallest memory of peace is barbed, caught tight in the throat, so that every time she speaks with pain. She speaks every day. And I'll read this one. On not knowing you, for my ancestors. You would think I would know what to do with loss, remote like a prayer, urgent like a country. I've digested my parents' memories, but the names of things have slipped away before I can fix my mind to the task of holding on to what fed them, what grew in the ground by their homes, who lived there and who died. Before my trip to Cambodia, my father tells me he wants to be buried with the bones of his mother, lost before all other loss, in a place I do not know, a patch of land he has bought for the purpose. I follow new cousins along the edge of rice paddies, desolate in the dry season. We pass a grove of short trees with broad, wide leaves. Mango, they say, which I believe, though I see no fruit. They could have said anything, and I would have believed them. In the distance, I recognize coconut trees, iconic and swaying. This can't be grief, I think. I'm never sad enough. And this one is one refugee poet's origin story. I knew I was a poet, not because when my father called me dog, his voice ragged with contempt and disappointment, I had known where to stash the memory so that no one would get hurt. No, I knew I was a poet because when ice encased the sidewalk trees, they became jeweled blooms, gleaming at me like a song from lost memory. No, it's not that poets just see beauty, following it like a migratory instinct. No, it's that once in childhood, I encountered leaves talking to each other. And after that, I could not stop those cryptic moments from dropping into my day. A stunning weed, the ghostly morning sun, remains on the sidewalk will halt me in my tracks. Today, someone will ask me to write about war, and I can write about it because I am alive now. Yes, I can see my father's young promise, what he could have been before war and genocide, how that tender lover of all beautiful things was worked to death in the miserable rice paddies. No, I cannot speak for him, nor for any of the dead, but I find them all the time in my poems. I think I just have two more, if I have time. Starlings in the United States. Some of you look at us and think crow or blackbird, or think nothing of shooting us from our perches, or even a poison glaze fails to dislocate our brood. We are considered a nuisance, fouling your monuments, ruining your gardens. You call us invasive. There are at least 200 million of us and more growing. You never reckoned with how we came to be here. You say competition and success. You build taxonomy and nomenclature like power. You set us as a cautionary tale. Now watch us take to the sky, our murmuration undulating beyond your reach, mass of flight and survival by instinct. Notice how we change the angles of our iridescent bodies, how we create the necessary pulses of confusion. Our next move cannot be pinned down. Your population controls are not working. We are still here. Tell us, how is our imperative to endure different from yours? And I'll just end with this poem that's for my kids, my sons. Whenever anyone tells me I'm a good mother, I want to say, I'm not raising my sons to be men. Their futures are inscrutable. Can this be a compliment when it's specific to women and our need to be needed in a world of disposable bodies? If we're honest, we, good mothers, are flickering lenticulars, depending on your angle, monsters or care incarnate. My sons and I play a game. I tell them, I love you more than all the leaves and all the trees and all the forests. And they respond, I love you more than all the leaves and all the trees and all the forests. +1. There we go, on and on, to all the stars, riding every drop of rain, accounting each particle of dirt, every trace of matter. They claim every shifting cloud, every single hair. I respond with every dissipating wave of sound and every circulating breath. We race along the number line, forward and back, infinity becoming a ball we bounce across every boundary. We take the measure of every little thing in the universe we can think of. And then sometimes they turn and ask me, are you happy or are you mad? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to you and to all of the features today. You give us something to think about. Thank you for your words. We're going to start our open mic. Our first person on the open mic is Len Germinaria.
Thank you, Robbie. Thank you for everybody's reading today. It's fantastic. I'm going to start with the Haibun, something from Basho, a small piece of prose distilled into a haiku. It's called Something. Something to consider when your partner skedaddles in the pre-dawn hours, a coffee stain of words on a post-it note left in the silver salver on this end of the table by the front door. Reading it, transfixed by the obsession with the mundane, muttering sounds and sputtering spittle about time and how this upsets your routine while there he sits, obedient and at your beck and call, his leash and a walking stick at his feet, saying with puppy dog eyes, please take the time to walk me, 'cause I need to go, 'cause. Roused from bed at 5, sleeping dog snoring loudly, wakes up, tail wagging. And the second poem is a poem that I wrote on the day that it was learned that Nili Tchaikovsky had passed away. And it's called Standing Pat. Standing pat, I heard a poet we know left yesterday, right after I got off the phone with you, as it turned out. Instantly thought of every gray hair dear to me, wan, waiting ways we all have coming. It was comforting, whatever it is in Galway's prayer. Anyway, thanks for the phone call and much more than that. That's my time. Thank you.
Thanks, Len. I'm
Thanks,
holding
Robbie.
off the cat with one hand, so I don't know how long I'm going to be successful. Our next reader is Marc Petrie.
Hello. I can't tell you how much I was moved by all the readers, but especially the Cambodian readers. My family were in France for the length of World War II and were bombed. My mother's college certificate is dated June 6, 1944, because on that day my mother's college was bombed below sea level. So I, peace be with you. Peace be with you, and thank you for sharing. This first poem is called Ornament. She recalled her husband talking about the soft crystal snow that lived in the beautiful depression of the ornament, the one she had unwrapped from newspaper, then tissue paper, before she hung it near the top of the evergreen on the far side of the television, so that everyone could see it sparkle with the blinking color falling off the strings of electric lights. Each cut crystal facet drew light, the small snowfall inside suspended as if frozen from a memorable blizzard. The day he left, she went into the attic and pulled the bulb from the seat on top of the box marked Christmas decorations, unwrapped the newspaper, then the tissue before she plunged her thumb into the meat of the glass, cutting the snow in 1,000 shards, some of which penetrated her thumb so that the clear crystal turned crimson. She sat under the eave, staring with curiosity at how easily the blood escaped her body, how simple it was to break the crystal she so long admired. In that long, languorous summer day, she cut a long sliver of glass from what remained that she used to open the skin at her wrist. There she sat, wrapped in a keepsake quilt, admiring how things look when they are finally broken, until her own skin turned blue. And this is a poem called The Binding of Yitzhak. And the prophet followed God's messenger with his only son behind him, and the servants carrying wood up the mountain where Abraham built the slaughterhouse. And a voice in Yitzhak's ear whispered, "Will you come with me, little boy, father of Israel? I will carry you away from this mountain where God himself witnesses his people's sacrifice. In the 10,000 shtetls where you once played, the house of your father." But the boy turned away from the voice and saw the empty windows of his home, the vacant synagogue where he once stood with his father during Shabbat. And Abraham built the slaughterhouse on the mountain of death, where he arranged the wood and bound Yitzhak, his son. Then he placed his son on the wood for the pending death. It was then Yitzhak saw his father for the first time. And for the first time, Yitzhak knew love. Almost terror, almost heartbreak, a pigeon appearing at the temple window. The knife extended, the faith of a son in his father's protection. The voice of God's messenger calling for it all to stop. I'd like to dedicate that one to both sides of the disaster in the Middle East right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I'm with you on that. Our next reader is Gary Grossman.
Hi, everyone. And yes, very, very powerful readings. And Chase, I loved your short poems. It seems like so few people write short poems these days. And of course, it takes such skill to pack feeling and imagery in short verse. So anyway, this is my first poem. It's called Cohabitation. Moths, unnerving as a loose power line flailing the jello air with high voltage. as it is their randomness that frightens, erratically bouncing up to down, right to left, northeast to southwest. I miss SWAT after SWAT, as if these small powdery planes had ESP or echolocation. I've lived years with these carpet and clothing moths, Trichophaga, Tinea, and Tineola, gnawers of suits and carpets, shearing stitches like the anti-seamstress. Not willing to bomb the house, we coexist, Latvia and Russia, as I rocket off the couch while watching Jimmy Kimmel, trying to forecast the spins and barrel rolls of this latest Lepidopteran dogfighter. My weapon, hand or blue plastic swatter. Sometimes the rush of success. Then I lick talc-dusted fingers, erasing the chalky corpse from the ecru living room wall. Next morning, I open my t-shirt drawer only to unveil 2 tiny holes in my Athfest 2015 shirt. The one perfectly aged, sweet as a baby's bum. And I reckon that moth-human interactions are eternal as sunrise in the east, in unwinnable war against survivors of the age of insects, unless I'm willing to invoke the nuclear option. But the holes are small and few will notice. And my next poem is entitled Softness. It's funny, it's another t-shirt poem. My mother passed down both guilt and the work ethic, heirlooms that serve through crisis and calm. When my wife and I met, our pockets held nothing but fingers. After all, it's the thought that counts. To her, I passed down t-shirt heirlooms, well-worn and soft as nightingale's feathers. Now, her nightgowns, winter and summer. 10 years later, the girls knocked on the door of her womb, then arrived and inherited my t-shirts, shirts climbing down another generation's stair step, now floor length over 5-year-old stick legs. I wonder which of my cells linger in these slightly transparent cotton shirts, caresses and scent thread bound to embrace familial bodies. Perhaps they can even savor my taste as they whisk the pliable front collar into their mouths in the universal urge to suckle. How can such soft cloth hold the thick granite chunks of love? Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Those were fun. Laurie is next.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, everyone. The poems were great. And as BK knows, I thank Pichchenda Bao. I worked with Cambodian refugees for 12 years in the refugee camps in Asia. And the survival of the Cambodian voices today is strikes such a chord and is so very necessary. So those poems just were amazing. And I thank you. Getting back to our lives here, a few days ago, we had 34 miracles happen. So I thought that I would read a poem about miracles to start off today. Okay. This is about miracles and about dogs. Miracle Muffin. Muffin was a rescue, but aren't we all rescues in one way or another? If we speak of dog years, she had many, and her name was not our choice, but who can ever choose a calling? Part Shiba Inu and parts unknown, she was a promised dog, my son's first friend, when we moved to places unknown, strange house, unpaved streets, rural roots, a companion he needed until he didn't. Then, like a giving tree, she started to slow. Her limbs drooped, her gait wobbled, and her kidneys faltered, then came back, filtered like a prayer. Giving her a tad of time to fetch her bargain of days. And each time this happened, the vet called her a miracle. But aren't we all miracles at one time or another? And next poem, wait, where is it? It's June, and what a wonderful way to bring in June by talking about watermelon. So here's a poem about watermelon. It's called Old Married Couple Cutting Watermelon. There are some things we just don't do well together. I am not your tennis partner. There are some mountains you climb alone. I cannot sing while you tune your guitar, but we have learned the rhythm of a couple with a cleaver. We both know how to check for ripeness, a lawn green skin with a yellow sun bursting at its center, an ear to the rind, checking for the sea caught in a shell sound. At home, we prepare the counter, find a balance so the orb does not roll, fill containers with ruby red squares that will quench our aging thirst. One July day, while you napped, the temperature grew thick as watermelon skin. Alone in the kitchen, I tackled the green ball with a serrated edge, found the sweet spot on the counter to conquer the roll, sliced the fruit in halves and quarters until plates were glowing with squares looking like polished gems. What I thought was a job for two, I could do by myself. Handle a knife, square a slice, dispose of rinds, fill a bowl that only I would gorge from, a selfish appetite quenched. Alone in the kitchen, I picked the ripest pieces, but the juices did not burst nor run over my tongue with the same coupled sweetness. Thank you. Happy Pride
Thank
Month,
you.
everybody.
That's delightful. Thank you very much. Our next reader is Jim, our editor of Verse Ritual.
The first poem I'm going to read is called Night Ride. It's a relationship poem, but it chronicles my wife and I, who frequently, because of our children and their difficulties, had to put off exercise and doing fun things until after dark. And we loved riding our bikes along a linear park trail. So here's Night Ride. Tonight, like many nights before, in a random fit of responsibility, we take our bikes into the darkness, determined to gain something, anything, from this exercise in futility. Down a path that has seen us 100 times or more, pushing against the wind, silent with the effort. I have tried to talk to you, but quiet words are useless, and I am forced to shout into the wind, the irritating gusts of resistance that slow us to a crawl. I lower my head, damned if I will be stopped, and pedal harder down this predetermined pavement, knowing that it always has a turnaround to take us home. There is unspoken frustration in the difference of perception. My path has a beginning and an end, brief pause in the middle. It is a task to be completed, nothing more. You look at me surprised that I do not know the building with the roof that glows red from the Budweiser sign across the freeway, nor the outbuildings in the orchards that I never see. Just like the curve in the path that skirts the ramp of Highway 12 to 80 was just a place in the darkness that required navigating. My focus is on the few feet ahead that our pathetic lights reveal. These milestones for you mean nothing to me, mark no progress, provide no pleasant diversion. My path has a beginning and an end, and the distance between is filled only with darkness, the roar of freeway traffic, and a sense that this effort, however nobly begun, simply leads us back to where we started. Then I'm going to go really short. And in between the two poems, I want to say two things. BK, this is a term you might find useful as an alternative to selective memory. It's called protective amnesia. And Pichchenda, your poem on starlings is the best immigrant apologist poem I have ever heard. I loved it. So my second poem is a love poem. I don't apologize anymore for writing love poems. I've gotten old enough that I can do that. It's called Remember. When time has slipped into space and space has spun away, leaving nothing in its wake, there will still be this, your memory held safely wherever I am, because one reality of life is that having loved you, I will remember.
Sweet. Thank you very much. It's always good to hear from you. Judy, it's your turn.
Hi, everyone. I am incredibly moved by the work tonight. BK and Pichchenda, I just am overwhelmed really by listening to your work. And Chase, the exactitude of your language, especially in speaking about a subject I write about a great deal, which is old age, is really so moving to me. Your language is so subtle and so precise, and I found it extremely moving as well. So, in reading just two short poems in the company of such work, I want to say that, as BK said, you know, in certain situations, one particularly appreciates that one's life is a gift, and I do too. Insofar as my father was an immigrant from Nazi Germany, and I often think, you know, what would have happened, of course. And so I have a little chapbook coming out, which is really about a rather happy childhood in New York City. And part of that happiness was because although my dad lost family who were murdered in Auschwitz, he was not the sort of survivor who was so torn. And that was partially the circumstances. It was one member of his family and not hordes. And she was much older and made the choice to stay in Germany. But I know so many people who were the children of Holocaust survivors who have not had happy childhoods because their parents, the grief that their parents held, went into the next generation. And so I am so thankful for what my father and my mother, who was also European immigrant, gave me. So this is the last poem in this little book, which is coming out officially on June 6th, and which is called Oh Memory, You Unlocked Cabinet of Amazements. Here is Cold Spring Night. I draw the down comforter over my chest, my eyes already half closed, and it seems itself to respire, taking in a deep breath, then gently deflating. And then I reach down again to pull the old quilt over it, my fingertips brushing the softness wrought by numerous spins in the washing machine. And then I pat the quilt flat below my neck as I would smooth out the soil around a tiny sapling I've just planted, as if wishing myself tender dreams, perhaps, as I used to wish sweet ones for my children who used to ask to be tucked in. And behind those almost completely vanished flashes, the vaguest shadows hold their peace. My child self, in a narrow bed, kissed on the forehead, the corner nightlight glimmering on, the room dimmed. What have I done in my life to melt into this time sum of quietness and calm, not to be one of the beautiful children or their mothers displaced for years, lying on stony ground in torn tents, shaken by hot winds, blowing gritty dust. And this is a short poem in a very different tone, both funny and not, I hope, which was in the previous book that came out this year from Sheila Naguib. Leaving. If fire raged at the other end of my street and I had to escape, I would object. But my desk is a mess. Honestly, I need to Marie Kondo the whole house to find what to take. In the midst of war, I would speak up like that old woman in Bakhmut who resisted her rescuers' "let's go" with, "I need to pack grapes and maybe some sort of pancakes," because even an apartment with no heat in a building blasted by a bomb pulses like a neutron star. Home, home, home. When the angel of death, when the angel of death arrives at my door with lethe by IV for my pain, my brain will obsess. But I haven't decided yet whether to leave my diaries to the kids or burn them. And there are dishes festering in the sink. And we're going next week with our best friends to that new French rest.
That reminds me of Don't Bump the Glump. If you remember that, Silverstein. It's,
Oh, okay, yes.
yeah. I could actually recite it, but I'll spare you. Dick, it's your turn. Dick, are you still there?
I sure am. Sorry about that. I forgot to unmute after all these years. Imagine that. I so appreciate the reading and Robbie, you for continuing to host such great folks. I'm just going to read one poem, an uncharacteristic of my readings where I usually do very short poems. This is a longer one, so take a breath. And it's called An Anti-Ode to Climate Change. And the epigraph is from Isaiah. The new wine fails, the vine languishes, and all the merry-hearted sigh. What I love is not climate change, which arrives in its various guises, now a flood that cleans the plate, now a drought that parches the tongue, now heat which poaches people in the street. It's strange that this glorious day here is changed too. Yesterday in this ordinary May, it was 92 in the shade. Today we wake to a cool morning, the sky a blazing blue, so blue that I hurt with the knowledge that I am alive to burn in its beauty. How can I tell this to the people of Delhi, whose cold water taps scald, whose heat-stroked brains swell, whose fans blow air hot enough to cook an old man sitting in his recliner? Medium rare. Seriously, people, humans have become indistinguishable from meat raised in feedlots far away, and it's not yet hot here in Ohio, so why would I care? Though I don't love the southern corn rust in my crops, the frog-eye leaf spot, the tar smut, and those beautiful harlequin bugs shaped like blood-red shields, invaders from the south who eat and eat and eat and love the warming winters here. Though I miss the snow, I really do. Did you know there are people in Brazil who've saved dogs that treaded water for 3 days? Dog and man whimper about the floods that have turned streets into rivers, and some say weather is just weather, and I say, fuck you. Of course it's true. Day-to-day storms have always raged, but this is like Mad Max Christmas every day. Christmas, Christmas, Christmas. And the Magi are exhausted from visiting us again and again and saying, just wait, the end days will come to a city near you. And what the wise men fail to say is that the fun thing about climate change is that the earth doesn't really care about us humans. If we fail to eat or eat each other or go extinct, the rocks will rub together, the rain will rain for 40 days or not, the deserts will dry or bloom, and there will be more room for trees or the next audacious species. But the thing is, we humans won't go away anytime soon. We'll wage war and rage, and those who can, like me, will consume and consume and consume, and Amazon will still deliver, and we who remain will blame it on the man and cry about the sunken cities and wildfires and all those people in the news, the billions and billions served who will roam the earth in search of food. And yes, they will try to climb the walls of my compound, but I can count on the man to protect me. And of course, next day delivery. And rely on the oil execs too, who will burn us all once they've run out of crude and sell us our own bodies to use as fuel. Thank you all.
Wow. Okay. On that note, our last reader in the open mic in the reading is Kika. You still there, Kika? Are you muted?
I want to, yeah, I was muted. I did it too. I want to say thank you to everybody who read today. It was incredibly beautiful and so powerful and heart-wrenching. So thank you to all three of you. And thank you to all these this is a really good open mic. Dick, your poem gave me anxiety, but that's okay. I'll forgive you for that. All right. So, hold on. I'm just reading one poem. I'm last, and I know you guys want to go have lunch or something. So this is a prose poem, and it's called Skin to Skin. And the epigraph is Rumi. I was a dust mote. Because of you, I am a mountain. 1. It never was my intention to float lazily through the living room, reflecting the light, unsure where I would land. I was shed from your skin, that kind of Eve, not even granted the rib of bone. I spent years unable to vote, years toiling in kitchens to feed what fueled your power. Now I angle toward the corner of the room where the spider webs me a mountain. 2. The creation of the world comes from weaving hands, the spider-like 3 fates. And even though I share your skin, I am not you. It's all just sex and shedding, birth and loss, mountains and the flat plains like my palms over our babies' bellies. I've cast ballots and nets and gathered seeds. I've climbed my peak to watch you enter a mine, breathe in coal dust. 3. It never was my intention to sweep myself into a dustpan and release me into the elements, but I did. Winter threatens and a regime is on the verge of collapse. There are wars. You have angled north and all the spiders move inside. They know how to stay above ground, how to corner their universe. I've found in my legs an anchor from which I can rise and look down. The city lights you up in the dark.
Thank you, Kika. Always goes in unexpected places.
Thank you.
Before we all go, I'm going to turn off the recording. And if any of you have questions for our readers, our featured readers, please do.